Welcome back, everyone, to another reaction video. Well, I saw that my friend Mr. Terry did this one a little while ago, and I thought, under the circumstances, it was a good time to talk about this in the context of broader history. So this is from a channel called Pure Data Comparison. I'm not familiar with it. The video came out 2 weeks ago, and it's the 10 most shocking assassinations in American history. You know, when we talk about American history, we typically, in terms of assassinations, talk about 4 presidents. 2 really well-known, Lincoln and Kennedy. 2 lesser-known, happen to be the 2 that are from my home area of northeastern Ohio, with Garfield and McKinley. And then, of course, many people are still alive today who remember other assassinations, such as Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King Jr., who happened within a couple of months of each other in 1968. And there's a few other ones here as well. Looks like we're going to be talking about Charlie Kirk, we're going to talk about Harvey Milk, and we're going to talk about Malcolm X. So interesting to kind of compare and contrast what we're seeing right now as we're living through a significant assassination. Obviously not a person in power from the standpoint of being in political position, but much like someone like Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., someone who had a great deal of influence and was part of a movement. So this will be interesting. I'll put the link down in the description. I have no idea what to expect from this channel. I've never watched anything from them before. Don't know if it's like an AI thing or if it's like a naturally narrated one, so we'll see how it goes. Let's dive in.
Assassinations have shaped America's history. From presidents to activists to rising voices, these violent moments left scars that still define the nation. Here are the stories of lives cut short and how their deaths changed America forever. Abraham Lincoln, 16th President of the United States, led the nation through the Civil War and ended slavery. On the night of April 14, 1865, just days after the war's end, Lincoln attended a play at Ford's Theater in Washington, D.C.
So I'm not going to spend a ton of time on the presidential assassinations. I feel like those are topics we're more familiar with, topics we've talked more about already. I'll talk a little bit about them, but I want to focus the majority of my commentary for this video on the non-presidential assassinations they're going to talk about, because we haven't talked as much about those.
During the performance, actor and Confederate sympathizer John Wilkes Booth slipped into the president's box and shot him in the back of the head.
So you see Major Henry Rathbone there holding his arm. He had been stabbed by Booth. There were a couple of different invitations that had been given to be the second couple with the Lincolns. It was primarily supposed to be General Grant and his wife, Julia. And Grant had just left town that day, and Julia was convinced for years afterwards that John Wilkes Booth had stopped as they were riding out of town. A man rode up next to them and his horse and looked in and kind of stared at them and then went away. And she swore for years after it was John Wilkes Booth who did that. We'll never know for sure. But Julia didn't particularly like Mrs. Lincoln. Like a lot of people, Mrs. Lincoln had rubbed her the wrong way and been pretty brutal at times around her because of her mental health issues that she had. There were some others that have been invited at various times, but it ended up being Major Rathbone and Clara Harris, who I think was the daughter of a senator. And it was all part of like the social circles that everybody ran in, and afterwards, in the years to come, Major Rathbone deals with his own mental health issues, ends up murdering Clara Harris, and then I think ends up in an asylum after that.
Lincoln was carried across the street, where he died the next morning. Lincoln's death sent shockwaves across the country. The nation's great unifier was gone, and America faced the daunting task of reconstruction without his leadership.
Yep.
His assassination remains one of the most tragic turning points in U.S. history.
I find some of these drawings that I've been looking at very interesting because of who they put in them. So the last one they showed, you could see Andrew Johnson in it. You saw Tad Lincoln, president's son. To my knowledge, neither one of them were there in a big group of people that were visiting the president at the end of his life. In this one, we've got General Meade right here. I don't think General Meade came. He was still in the field at this point. See Gideon Wells right there. I'm not sure who else is in this one.
James A. Garfield, the 20th President of the United States, was a promising reformer who had been in office only a few months when tragedy struck. On July 2, 1881, at a Washington, D.C. train station, Garfield was shot twice by Charles Guiteau, a disgruntled office seeker.
It's always interesting to me that we boil Charles Guiteau down to disgruntled office seeker, and we've done an entire video on Charles Guiteau. Charles Guiteau was insane, and everyone who knew him knew he was insane. And I highly, highly recommend to you the book Destiny of the Republic. Phenomenal book, and in about 6 weeks from the time I'm recording this, the Netflix series Death by Lightning is coming out, which is based on Destiny of the Republic, and it tells the story of Charles Guiteau, of James Garfield. Fascinating story. Really crazy how Garfield even became president in the first place, because he went to the convention to nominate Ohio Senator John Sherman, the brother of General Sherman, to be president. And one of the people that Sherman was running against was James Blaine, who is the guy who was standing next to Garfield in the train station when he was shot. Blaine was Garfield's Secretary of State. And it was one of those situations where you had different factions. You had Blaine, you had Grant, who was running for a third term. You had Sherman, and I think there was a fourth guy as well. And nobody could get enough votes. It was kind of like how Lincoln got the nomination in 1860. And finally, there are over 30 ballots without a winner. And Garfield had given the speech to nominate John Sherman. And he's a phenomenal speaker. He's highly regarded. And somebody switches their votes, and a couple of votes in one of the delegations, might have been Wisconsin, vote for Garfield. And Garfield gets up and said, no, I'm not a candidate. I'm not running. Don't vote for me. And then within another ballot, he's the nominee. It was pretty crazy.
He lingered for over 2 months before dying on September 19th.
Doctors killed him.
Garfield's assassination shocked the nation and fueled demands for reform, leading to the creation of a professional civil service system to reduce corruption in government jobs.
And give a ton of credit to Chester Arthur, who was Garfield's vice president. He was a product of the spoils system. He was a crony of Roscoe Conkling, who was a Republican senator from New York, who basically had controlled the politics in New York. And Garfield went to war with Conkling, political war, over the spoils system and over the appointment of a particular guy. Conkling resigns in protest and then expects he's going to get renominated to the Senate, and the New York legislature doesn't, and Conkling, it backfired on him big time. But Arthur is Conkling's man to the point where he actually lives with Conkling as vice president. But he becomes president, and he suddenly turns into this great reformer, and he honors Garfield's legacy by becoming a champion of civil service reform. And I give Arthur a ton of credit for that.
William McKinley, the 25th President of the United States, presided over a time of economic growth and America's rise as a world power.
Yep.
On September 6, 1901, while greeting the public at the Pan American Exposition in Buffalo, New York, McKinley was shot at close range by anarchist Leon Czolgosz.
This is where, as an Ohioan, I am obliged to point out the connections between Michigan and these two assassinations of northeastern Ohio presidents. Leon Czolgosz, who is the assassin of McKinley. McKinley's from northeast Ohio. He, literally, I can look out, I've said it before, I can look out my window and see the sign that shows his boyhood home right down the street from me. He was born in Niles, Ohio, grows up here in Poland, lives his adult life in Canton. And my friend Matt Beat on his channel, Mr. Beat, is going to have some videos that I'm going to be appearing in about Garfield and McKinley that we shot when he was here recently. But Leon Czolgosz is born in Michigan, kills a northeastern Ohio president. Charles Guiteau attended the University of Michigan, assassinated a northeastern Ohio president. Just saying.
Died 8 days later. McKinley's assassination brought Theodore Roosevelt to the presidency, ushering in a new era of progressive reforms and a bold new vision for America's role in the world. John F. Kennedy, the 35th President of the United States, inspired a generation with his calls for progress, hope, and a new frontier during the Cold War. On November 22, 1963, as his motorcade drove through Dallas, Texas, Kennedy was struck by an assassin's bullet. Lee Harvey Oswald was charged with the crime, though countless conspiracy theories have surrounded the event ever since.
And this is another one we've talked about. I did a whole series from Lamino's fantastic look at the events in the Texas School Book Depository. Highly recommend, if you want to get a better grasp of this assassination, go to Dealey Plaza in Dallas. I think you'll be shocked at how small it is and how close the window from the Texas School Book Depository is to the site where Kennedy was shot. It's a much, like, you don't get the scale of it watching video of it. It was much closer than you think.
Kennedy's assassination shocked the world, ending a presidency filled with promise and leaving a lasting scar on American history and culture. Malcolm X, a fiery activist and minister, became one of the most influential voices for black empowerment and human rights. On February 21, 1965, as he began a speech at the Audubon Ballroom in New York City, Malcolm X was fatally shot by armed assailants in the audience. His assassination silenced a powerful voice, but his ideas and speeches lived on, continuing to inspire movements for racial justice around the world.
One of the things that has always fascinated me about Malcolm X is to look at him through the lens of the ways in which he's similar, but also the many ways in which he's very different than Dr. King. So Martin Luther King Jr., obviously all about pacifism, bold and very outspoken, but about pacifism and that sort of opposition to what was happening and discrimination. He's a Christian, Dr. Martin Luther King is, all about peace, all about standing strong but not violence. Malcolm X, a Muslim, he's much more about, I wouldn't necessarily completely call him a militant, but he's closer to like the Black Panther end of things, right? He's much more about fighting back and fighting actively for your rights. And I think that there was room for both of those, and those are both voices that needed to be heard so that people could kind of make their decision. And it's interesting, of course, that Dr. King is shot by a white man. Malcolm X is shot by black men, and there was opposition, even within the black community over Malcolm X and his methods. And I didn't, of course, live through these times. My mother did, and she was even pretty young when all this went down, my mother and father. But just interesting to see the different ways in which people approached the idea of civil rights.
Martin Luther King Jr., the nation's most prominent civil rights leader, championed nonviolent protest and equality for African Americans. On April 4, 1968, as he stood on the balcony of a motel in Memphis, Tennessee, King was fatally shot by James Earl Ray.
So, for those who haven't seen, this is literally a photo right before he was shot at the hotel there, and right there, standing next to him, is Jesse Jackson. If you're not familiar, if you're my generation, you know very well Jesse Jackson is one of the most prominent voices out there when it comes to civil rights and things like that. And that's him standing right there next to King.
King's assassination ignited riots across the country, but also strengthened his legacy as a martyr for justice, inspiring generations to continue the fight for civil rights.
And what's crazy about this one in this case is they didn't catch the guy right away. I think it was months before James Earl Ray was arrested for this. And of course, like any prominent assassination, there are conspiracy theories. Did James Earl Ray really do it? Was he, a patsy for someone else? Was the government involved? It seems like any time we have one of these assassinations, there are those theories.
Robert F. Kennedy, U.S. Senator and brother of President John F. Kennedy, was a rising political figure who gave hope to millions during a turbulent era.
About RFK, I think especially in light of what we're going through right now in this country with the violence, the political violence we've seen, I think it's worth listening to Robert Kennedy's words that were spoken at a rally the night that Dr. King was assassinated in April of 1968. It was just a couple months before Robert Kennedy was assassinated. Very powerful words that I think we need to hear again.
June 5th, 1968, After delivering a victory speech in Los Angeles during his presidential campaign, Kennedy was shot by Sirhan Sirhan. He died the following day. His assassination ended the promise of another Kennedy presidency and deepened America's sense of loss during one of its most chaotic decades.
So Sirhan's still in prison. Interesting, if you've seen Band of Brothers, you might be familiar with, and I think they mention it at the end of Band of Brothers, that one of the people on the prosecution team for the case against Sirhan was Buck Compton, who was one of the officers in the Easy Company during Band of Brothers. And of course, like I mentioned with the others, there are conspiracy theories again. There are people that have claimed that more bullets were fired than Sirhan had in his gun, and more shell casings were found and all this stuff. And I think most of those have been pretty well debunked, but I know some of you, even watching this, are probably adherents to some of those conspiracy theories about Robert Kennedy. But I mean, Sirhan, the bullet that hit Kennedy in the back of the head was fired from inches away. I mean, the people that were there and present for this, like, grabbed the guy right away, but he did get off several shots.
Harvey Milk, one of the first openly gay elected officials in the United States, was a champion for LGBTQ rights in San Francisco. On November 27, 1978, Milk and Mayor George Moscone were shot and killed inside City Hall by former supervisor Dan White. Milk's assassination became a turning point for the LGBTQ movement, cementing his legacy as a symbol of courage and equality.
So they made a movie about Harvey Milk, and I don't know a ton about this story, but I know that Harvey Milk, even though he's a San Francisco supervisor, right? He's not like a prominent person even in state or national politics from the standpoint of his position, but he was prominent in that because he was openly gay, and he's one of the first very outspokenly openly gay politicians. He did end up having a national platform, and he did get involved in national issues, and there are a lot of national issues. I mean, for example, one of the things that's going on in the late 70s is around the time I was born, is that there are a lot of communities that are passing ordinances concerning discrimination against people. So, for example, I think Miami was one of the places where they passed a bill that meant you could not discriminate against someone on the basis of sexual orientation. And there was a huge national uproar over this, and conservative Christian movements got involved and got the people to actually vote to overturn the bill, the anti-discrimination bill. And so Milk kind of became one of the national faces of the movement in defense of these bills and things like that. And so when he was assassinated, my understanding is that, at least on the surface, at least directly from what we know, he wasn't shot because he was gay. The mayor was shot as well. The guy who shot them was a fellow supervisor, former supervisor, who had lost his job and was kind of a disgruntled former employee. But there is some question about this, because he shoots the mayor, but then why, of all the supervisors, does he only shoot Harvey Milk? And so there's some speculation that maybe it did have something to do with his homosexuality and his outspokenness in defense of that issue. We don't have any definitive proof one way or the other about that, but he does. He, as they said, become a rallying cry and kind of a martyr for the cause of anti-discrimination against gay and other people of that sort. And much like I think Charlie Kirk is becoming, I can see some parallels, even though obviously they're very different in terms of their politics. Can see some parallels in terms of the kind of martyr status that's being granted to these people. And listen, don't get freaked out by that word martyr, because martyr simply means that somebody died because of a cause. So if someone is murdered because of their politics, because of their political positions, they are a martyr by the definition of the word. If they're murdered because of their faith, their religious faith, they are a martyr. I mean, martyr is a blanket term that covers anyone who dies as a direct result of some inherent ideology within them.
Charlie Kirk was a 31-year-old conservative activist, media personality, and founder of Turning Point USA. He'd become known for campus events, political commentary, and youth outreach, especially his American Comeback Tour. On September 10, 2025, during an event at Utah Valley University in Orem, Utah, Kirk was speaking to a crowd of around 3,000 when a single shot rang out. Video shows he was struck in the neck by a bullet fired from a nearby rooftop. He was rushed to the hospital, but later pronounced dead. Authorities described it as a political assassination, with the shooter still at large. Kirk's killing has shocked the nation. The event exposed the growing threat of political violence, intensified divisions, and prompted calls from leaders across the political spectrum for greater safety at public events. It's likely to become a landmark moment in the debate over free speech, security, and political polarization in America.
Listen, so I've already done several videos about the Charlie Kirk thing, so I'm not going to dive too much back into it here. I think it remains to be seen what the long-term impact is of this, and I think we've seen some of what may happen, but it's hard. We're too close to the event. It's been 2 weeks. Too close to the event right now to really say for sure long-term what this is going to look like, but I think we should let it play out. I think it could cause people to get more polarized and more divisive and more politically agitated, and might lead to more violence, or could go the other way, and I really hope it does go the other way, but we'll see.
Tupac Shakur was more than a rapper. He was a poet, activist, and one of the most influential voices in hip-hop, using his music to confront racism, poverty, and violence. On September 7, 1996, in Las Vegas, after attending a Mike Tyson boxing match, Tupac was shot multiple times in a drive-by shooting while riding in a car. He was rushed to the hospital but died 6 days later at just 25 years old. Tupac's murder shocked the world and fueled speculation, conspiracy theories, and the East Coast-West Coast rap feud. His legacy as a revolutionary artist lives on, making him a symbol of both the power and tragedy of hip-hop culture.
So, not really the kind of music I was into. I was in college in 1996, but definitely hugely impactful. I mean, it was a big deal when this happened. And for millions of people who are into that culture, that music, he very much represented a turning point in terms of violence and things of that nature when it came to gangs and the kind of stuff that was happening in the background of some of that musical culture. And I remember this vividly, what a big deal it was at the time.
John Lennon, former Beatle and global peace activist, was one of the most famous musicians of his time.
Yeah.
Known for his artistry and outspoken calls for peace, he was a cultural icon of the 20th century. On December 8, 1980, outside his New York City apartment, Lennon was approached by a fan, Mark David Chapman. As Lennon returned home with his wife, Chapman fired 4 shots, fatally wounding him.
So the interesting thing about this is that same fan, Mark David Chapman, had actually kind of stalked him earlier and had gotten an autograph from Lennon, and then was still there when Lennon came back from wherever he went.
Lennon's assassination stunned the world. Millions mourned the loss of a voice for peace, and his death marked the end of an era in music and culture. His songs and message, however, continue to inspire generations.
And that one's another one that's just really tragic, especially when you hear the story about it. I mean, obviously being shot right in front of his wife. And my understanding is when he was shot, he kind of stumbled into the doorway of the apartment and the apartment complex, the building there. And just, I mean, obviously he was alive long enough to understand what had happened to him. Very sad. All of these are tragic and unfortunate and shouldn't have happened. And have had a tremendous impact. Who do you think should be added that wasn't? There are a lot of other people who've been assassinated over time. I can think of some attempted assassinations that we could talk about at some point as well. But let me know in the comment section below. And if you like this channel and you want to check out more of it, you can use the link to do that. Thanks for watching.